Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Burgess, and I am from the Development and Communications Department here at the Central Library. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. Today, you are going to learn about adding events to the LibCal public calendar. The process is pretty intuitive, and from most accounts, staff is excited to be using this new product. If you have any questions at any time, please call me at 716-858-7189 or email me at burgessm@buffalolib.org. There's also a section of the intranet dedicated to the new SpringShare applications. Just look for the box on the homepage of the intranet labeled LibCal Room Reserve and Calendar. Updates will be posted on that page. So let's get started. So we're going to start off by showing you how to add events to the public website calendar. All libraries and all departments really are going to need to know how to do this because you want to add all your events to the public calendar just like you were with the eVanced platform. So to start off, we're going to click on the box on the intranet that says LibCal Room Reserve and Calendar. And this is going to be your how-to one-step guide for everything that you need for LibCal. So here's your link to get into LibCal, and then here's a bunch of support documents from LibCal itself about booking spaces and creating calendar events. You'll notice at the bottom of the page there are also these general LibCal support guides that we have created for staff at Central and at other libraries. There's also a link to the general SpringShare help guide. But again, if you have any questions, issues, things you would like to see added, anything like that, please feel free to give the Development and Communications Department a call, and we'll work with you. So first, we need to sign in to LibCal. So from the intranet, we're going to click on this link right here that says click here to get into LibCal. And you'll see this page that says LibApps Login at Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. LibApps is the general name for the program that we're using. LibCal is the specific calendar and room reservation software under this umbrella. So we're going to log in. All libraries have their own login information, and all departments should also have their own login information. If you aren't sure what your login is, please ask your director, manager, or supervisor, or give us a call, and we can help you out. So I'm going to start by logging in. And just click Login to LibApps right there. And just give it a second to load. So when you log in, this is the page that you will see. Now yours might look a little different. It will obviously have a different name up here. And if you've put any events in the calendar, your events will be listed here. The next 5 or 6 events will be listed here. Now because I haven't put anything into the calendar with this account yet, it says that I have no events coming up. Okay, let's get started with putting events in the public calendar. So we're going to start with this bar up at the top here and the tab that says Calendars. So you just want to click on that, and then you'll see that there's really only one calendar option: Public Events and Programming. We've put everything on one calendar, and then patrons are able to split it off by branch, audience, event type, etc. So there's a couple of things right off the bat that I'd like to show you on this page. If you click this part here that says Public Events and Programming, it will take you to the back end of adding events to the calendar, which is where we're going to want to go. But there's also the public-facing URL here that you can click on to see what the calendar looks like from the public side of things. Now, once we go live with LibCal, which we haven't as of the day that I'm doing this webinar, it will be on the public website, buffalolib.org, and you'll be able to get to the calendar right from there. Because I'm recording this before we've gone live, my only option of viewing the calendar from the public side is to view it through a link from the back end. So let me start by showing you what that public calendar looks like. So I'm just going to click on this link. And here is an example of what the public calendar looks like right now in calendar view for the month of December 2018. You'll see that events are listed by event type. Each event type has a different color sidebar. There's times, there's locations if they are at central, and there's a lot of information here. Patrons can also click to view it in a list view or a card view. And you'll see that no matter how they view it, there's options on the side here to filter by category, audience, and branch. But we'll go back to that in a little bit, because first you need to know how to add an event to the public calendar. So we're just going to go back to our dashboard here, and we're going to click on that public events and programming, and that's going to take us into the back end. So this is another view of the calendar, but this is the back end view only. This obviously, as you saw, was not how patrons will see the calendar. If you want to view your calendar for just your specific branch, you would go up here in the right corner and click your branch. And then it would show you only the events happening at your specific library. Just in case this can get a little overwhelming to look at. Whoops, I got a step ahead of myself. Just because this can get a little overwhelming to look at. There's a lot happening here. There's a lot of events, and you don't maybe need to look at library events that aren't happening at your branch. But I want to add an event to the public calendar. So how would I do that? You're going to start off by clicking this button right up here that says Add New Event. Pretty simple, right? From here, it's going to ask you for a bunch of information about your event. It's pretty standard. It's not really asking you for any information differently than any other platform has asked you. It's just a little different. So you want to start off with your date. I'm going to make an event for Saturday, January 12th, 2019. So I just want to select my date. As you can see, you can select all the way into 2021, but that's as far as it will let you go right now. But I'm going to stick with January 12th, 2019. After you've selected your date for your event, you want to pick the start time and the end time. So these are going to be the times that are going to show up on your public calendar. So you want to make sure that these are the correct actual times that your program is happening. So I'm going to make my event from 11 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Now I know that this time selection grid is a little different than we're used to doing things, but once you get the hang of it, it's really intuitive. It has the hours here and the minutes here, and it's just a.m. at the top and p.m. at the bottom. Pretty simple. So once we've selected our start time and end time, we can add setup padding or tear down padding. Now these times, if you add padding, will not show up on the public calendar. So only this time will show up on the public calendar. The padding is really for your own internal use so that you, let's say, don't book an event right after another one if that's something that your library doesn't want to do. So let's say that I'm going to be doing a craft program that I know is going to be super messy. We're going to be using glitter, which is every library's favorite thing, I'm sure. And I want to make sure that I'm not planning an event right after this that's going to overlap with my cleanup time. So I'm going to say that I don't need any setup padding, but that I want to give myself 30 minutes of teardown padding. And that, again, is just a safety net for my cleanup after the fact on the internal side of things. You'll notice under event date and time, there are also options for an all-day event, which would be a great use for an exhibit or another ongoing event like that doesn't necessarily have a start or end time. There's also an option to click "This event repeats" if you have a recurring event that you want to add. But we'll go back and show you that in a little bit. I just want to get started by showing you how to put one single event on the public calendar. So once we've put our date and time, we want to put our title and our event info. So again, it's pretty self-explanatory. You start with your event title. So I'm going to make this glitter, glue, and construction paper fun. That sounds fun, doesn't it? It sounds like something that I would want to go to on a Saturday in January. All right. So once we've put our title in, now we want to put our description. You can keep this pretty brief. Maybe we're going to say something like, "Come to the library and craft with us. We'll have plenty of glitter glue, construction paper, markers, and more. Free and open to the public." Short and sweet. It tells people what my event's about without being overwhelming. There is an option down here to add more information about this event, but I don't really need to add more information about my glitter glue event. However, if I wanted to, perhaps if I had specific themes for an event or more dates or something like that, I would add that information in here. Now, before we go any further, I do want to just mention there are all these options up here to make things bold and italics, to add links, to add images, to do all sorts of fun things. We want to keep this pretty standard because we want it to be ADA compliant. We don't want difficult colors, difficult font sizes, and things like that. If you have additional questions about your options here, there will be a graphics standards manual on the intranet for LibCal usage. So be sure to reference that if you're planning on changing the fonts or colors or anything in here. So once we've changed our description or put our description in there, we can now add an image to our event listing. This is super exciting. This is something that we couldn't do in Evanced, and it's just visually appealing. So that's where this featured image link comes in. So what we want to do is you can either upload an image directly to your event if it's a one-time use image, or you can add via the image manager. So we've already stocked the shared library with a bunch of images that you guys can use. You'll see here you have the option of a personal library, which would be just pictures that your account or your department or your library's account has uploaded. But if you click on this shared library, here's that stock of pictures that I said we've already loaded. So you've got things like the Battle of the Books logo, a picture of Rita, our mascot, some other logos, the library logo, I love my library, things like that. There's also this list of events along the side that we've added at least one or two pictures for under each category. So for instance, if this is a children's event, I'm going to click on children's events, and I can see there's my library logo, but there's also this really cute picture of these kids. And maybe I'll use that as my featured image to really capture someone's eye when they're looking at the events on the public website. So if you find your picture that you want to use, all you have to do is click this little picture down here that looks like a landscape, and it has now loaded my featured image into my event. Pretty simple, right? Our next piece is to add our event details. And again, this is going to show up on the public calendar. So I want to make sure that I'm adding my accurate event information. The first line is the location or the room. Now, if you're at Central Library and you're booking a space before you put this event on the calendar, the room that you've booked will automatically show up in this line. You won't have to select it. If you're booking a or if you're putting an event on the public calendar that's not at Central, all you need to do is select no location. Pretty simple. The next line is where you'll select the branch. So even if you're at Central, you have to select Central. If you're at another library, just go ahead and select your library. I'm going to say that my glitter glue and construction paper party is here at the Central Library. For the event organizer, it's going to automatically fill in your name or your department or your library's name, whatever it may be, in this line. So you can see it says Communications at Buffalo and Erie County Public Library because that's the account that I'm currently signed in under. This line is not going to show up on the public calendar. So if it does say your name, don't worry about it. It's not going to be on the public calendar. You have the option of adding a line for the presenter. For my event, I'm going to leave it blank. But if I had a lecture or a training with a specific presenter that I wanted to put, I could add their name in here. The next two categories or lines are really important because this is how people are going to filter your information on the public calendar. So the first option, as I showed you earlier, is that people can filter via audience. So things like adults, child, senior, preschool, young adult. These are things that people can choose on the public calendar to filter your events. So you want to make sure that you're adding whatever is appropriate. You can add more than one audience, and we recommend it if that's appropriate. So I'm going to add child, preschool, toddler, and all ages, because those are the age groups that my event is primarily targeted toward. In the next line is where I'm going to add my category or categories, depending on what your event fits under. So just going back in the audiences, if you guys saw, I wanted to select multiple audiences. All I had to do was click on them. If I decide that I want to change that and remove an audience, all I have to do is click on it. For the category, it's pretty similar, except that if you want to add an event to more than one category, you can't click on them all at once. You have to kind of go back in and add it again. So for this event, I'm going to make it a craft/maker event. And you can see it's added that category to my event listing. I'm also going to go back in and add it as family friendly. Let's see if there's anything else. And that's all I'm going to add for this one because it really doesn't fit under any of the other categories. But you can see that I added it under those two. If I decided to change one of those or take it off, all I would have to do is select this little trash can right next to the category name, and that would remove that category from my event listing. Again, pretty simple, right? It's pretty user-friendly, and we're really excited about it. The next line is the color, and you really just want to leave that with what it is. It will automatically fill in your color for your event based on the first category that you've chosen. And when I showed you guys on the public calendar, it's just that little tiny thin bar that shows up on the side of your event. And it just makes it color-coded for people to really easily see, these are all the family-friendly events. These are all the craft events. These are all the computer training events and what have you. So we're in a pretty good shape here to add our event to the calendar. There are options to add internal tags and internal notes, which I could do if something isn't maybe confirmed, or if there's a possibility of the speaker changing, or I'm not sure if I want to add registration yet, something like that. I could add that in the internal notes, but I'm going to leave it blank for now. There's also an option to enable event registration. So let's go ahead and do that. To enable registration for an event, all I have to do is click registration is required. Once you've clicked that, you'll see that more options have come up down here. And I can add a maximum registrations. So I think 15 for my glitter glue and construction paper party is pretty good. But you could change that if you need to. Here is also where you can add your registration form, which, as you can see, a lot of libraries have already submitted or added registration forms. This is something that you need to set up before you put your event in the public calendar, unless you've already set up a registration form that you're planning to use. And I will show you guys how to do that. But let's say I've already got my registration form set up, and it's this Send Craft Hour. All you have to do is select it. As you can see, there are other registration forms for other libraries, so you want to make sure that you're using the correct registration form for your library and for your specific event if you're using registration at all. You do not have to use the LibCal registration module. It is totally optional. I know a lot of libraries currently register patrons on a piece of paper or a notebook maybe or something like that, and you guys are absolutely free to continue doing that, but we would love it if you used this LibCal system because it is really user-friendly for librarians, for library staff, and for patrons to register themselves on the public calendar website as well. So again, you don't have to use it. You don't have to use it for every event. You can use it for some. It's totally up to you. So once I've selected my registration form, I can choose to say when registration opens. I can make it open now. I can make it open 4 weeks before my event, 2 weeks, 1 week, or whatever I choose. I'm going to keep it to open now. I can also choose when registration closes, whether it's a week before, a day before, an hour before. So maybe I want to know 24 hours before my event how many kids I have coming to my glitter glue event, because I need to know just how much glitter glue I need to bring. I can click on that, and it will now close 24 hours prior to the start of my event time that I listed above. There are a couple other options here. I can enable multiple attendees within a single registration, which is great if you have families or classes registering for an event, so that a teacher then wouldn't have to register each of their students individually, because of course that could be a lot for a teacher who's already busy to go in and register 15 kids separately. So all you have to do if you want to enable multiple attendees within a single registration is click on that box. You can also enable a waiting list for when your event is fully booked, and you can pick how many people you want to allow on your waiting list. But I'm going to leave the waiting list off because it's going to show once my 15 spots are booked that I'm booked, and that's all I can really handle for this event. You can also add a blind CC confirmation email, which would be where you would add your email if you want to get an email every time a patron registers for this event. Your other options here are to send email reminders or follow-up emails before and after your event, respectively. So you can send a reminder email saying, hey, don't forget you're signed up for glitter glue and construction paper fun on Saturday, January 12th at the Central Library. You can also send a follow-up email after the event saying, thank you for coming, and here's a link to our other events that are upcoming at the library. These event emails are templates that are already preset to fill in with your name, your library name, the date of your event, the name of your event, things like that. People will get a confirmation email when they have registered for your event, and that will have a link to cancel their registration if they need to. But these are just other emails that you can optionally send to your folks before or after your event if you feel the need to. The last few options here on this page are a social media component, which we have not set up yet and we will be exploring in the future. So if you have questions about that social media piece, please feel free to contact us and we can go over it with you. But as of right now, we're just going to leave that blank. Our last option is our publishing status. So if I'm all ready to publish this event to the calendar and make it go live, I'm all set. Or I can click to make it an unpublished draft if I've filled all this in, but I need to go check with my boss to make sure that we can really handle 15 kids. But I don't want to have to retype all this information, so I could save it as an unpublished draft and come back to it later once I've confirmed whatever information I need to confirm. Just make sure, if you're putting it as an unpublished draft, that you do remember to go back in and publish it, because it will not automatically publish to the calendar until you hit publish. All right, so I've added a ton of information here about my event, and I'm ready to add it to the calendar. So I'm going to submit Add New Event down here. And just give it a second. And there you go. My event has been added. Let's say I just want to double check and make sure that it came through. So it's taken me to the January 2019 calendar. And again, this is a lot of information. So if I want to narrow it down by branch, internal tags, audience, category, something like that, to make it easier for me to see, I can do that. So let's say I'm going to narrow it down by branch. It is now showing me on the internal side only the events happening at the Central Library. And I can see here on Saturday, January 12th, that there is my glitter glue and construction paper fun event. And again, this is just how it looks on the internal side. This is not how it looks on the public calendar. Let me show you guys how it would look on the public calendar. So I'm going to go to January. I'm going to search by branch again. And I'm going to scroll down. And again, there is my glitter glue and construction paper fun event. It has my time listed. If I hover over it, it says it's at Central Library. And I'm going to click on it. And there's more information and that wonderful little description I put in, as well as that cute featured image. You'll also see that because I enabled registration, there's a Begin Registration button. And this is how patrons will register for your events. This is also a way for eBranch or for you to register patrons for your own events. You can go through the public calendar like this and click Begin Registration. So going back to my internal side of things, what happens if I need to edit my event now? How do I do that? Well, the first step is to find it on the calendar here. So again, it's right here, January 12th. And I just want to click on it. You'll see this little pop-up comes up with some basic details about my event. It has my featured image, it has when I created the event, my date, my time, my basic information. If I wanted to delete this event, my first option here is to click on this little arrow and you'll see Delete Event. Pretty simple. That'll get rid of it. I can also copy this event if, let's say, I have another glitter glue and construction paper fun event happening in February, but I don't want to have to retype everything. I could copy that event and it will keep all the major details, and then I'll just change the date and time. I can also click over here and manage an event. Now you will only have this option for an event that you created, meaning an event that your department, your library, whatever your account is that you're signing into, you will only have this option if you created this event. So if I click on Manage Event, this is where I can see who has registered for my event. Obviously, since I just created it, no one has registered for it. But I could also add new attendees or see who's canceled or even email my attendees through this module. I can also go to Overview, and again, it will give me that basic information about what audience I picked, what categories I picked, who the owner of this event is, and things like that. If I go back to my calendar and go back to my event, and I want to change this event, I'm just going to click on Modify Event over here. And this takes you right back to that main page where we inputted all of our information about our event. So if I needed to change the time or fix the description or change the image or what have you, this is where I would do that. And then I would just scroll down and update the event. Pretty simple, right? So I've now shown you guys how to add an event to the public calendar, how to delete an event, and how to modify an event. I've also shown you how to set up registration for an event and how to register patrons from both the internal side and the public side of the calendar. So you'll see now how to create a recurring event. So again, it's pretty much the same thing. You just go back to this Add New Event button. Again, the page looks the same. So I'm going to make my event start on January 3rd. I'm going to make it a noon program from noon to 1. I'm not going to add setup or tear down padding because I don't need it. Let's just say it's a lecture series. This is where that Event Repeats button comes in handy. So once you click on this, you'll see this other option come up where you can then select if you want your event to repeat daily, for instance, if it's an exhibit or a display, weekly, if it's an event that happens weekly, monthly, or you have the option for a multi-date picker, which is great to use if your event schedule doesn't follow a set format. So for instance, if I have this event on a Tuesday and then I have it on a Saturday and then I have it, 2 weeks later on a Wednesday or something like that, where it doesn't follow that daily, weekly, or monthly recurrence, that multi-date picker is what you would want to use for that. But for the sake of example, I'm going to say that my event is weekly. I'm going to say that it repeats every week on Thursdays. And I'm going to say that it ends on December 17th. So it's going to put this event on the public calendar as happening every Thursday from 12 to 1 p.m. starting on January 3rd and ending on January 17th. From there, it's pretty much the same as adding a single event, unless you're adding registration. And then you'll see there's another option. So let's just start by adding my event information. Again, I'm going to go into my image manager. And here's a great picture of a woman on a computer, so I'll use that. I'm going to select no location, and I'm going to say that this is going to be at the Alden Library. Again, my event organizer is myself, and there's no presenter. For my audiences, I'm going to say that this is for adults and seniors. I'm going to say that my category is computers and the internet. I'm also going to say that it's a training event. So this is where, again, the recurring event differs from the single event. If I'm all set and I don't want to set up registration for my recurring events, I can just go down here and click Submit Add New Event. If I want to set up registration, it's the same to start off as for the individual events. You click that Registration is Required box and your More fields come up. The only thing you will see different here, and this will only show up if you've set it up to be a recurring event, is this option to click Series Link Registration. If this is enabled, someone will be able to register for all of those events at once. So someone will sign up for all 3 of my computer trainings at the same time. The caveat to this that we have not solved yet, but that we have put in a request ticket to LibCal about, is that if you have enabled Series Link registration, there is then no way for someone to just go in and register for one of those events. Their only option is to register for all 3 at the same time. So just keep that in mind if you're enabling or not enabling Series Link registration. If I don't enable Series Link registration, people will have to register for each event individually. They won't have the option of just registering for all 3 or 6 or however many of these events at once. Again, it's really about what works for you and what's going to work for your library, and it may differ from event to event. So think about it and use it as you will. And again, it's those same options for sending an email reminder, sending a follow-up email, and all that other information, just like when we were adding a single event. We're going to now submit and add new event. And my events are now listed on the public calendar right there. The one thing that you will notice is different. If you're adding a recurring event and you want to change it, when you click on it, you'll see now here it says modify single event. If I click this drop down, it will also say modify all recurring events. So then that is if I need to change one event, or if I want to change the whole series, I would go back in and do that. But other than that, and the registration piece, really adding a recurring event is the same as adding a single event. And it's pretty simple. The last thing that I want to show you guys on the calendar side is the registration forms. So when we were adding those events and we had to add registration, or we wanted to add registration because it's optional, we had to select a registration form. And as I said, these are things that need to be created before you're adding the event. And it seems like a lot of libraries have already created registration forms, and that is fantastic. If you need to check on a registration form or add a new one, you're just going to click this tab right up in here. So again, how I got here, I clicked on the calendar tab and I click on this registration forms tab. And you'll see here's all the registration forms that have been created throughout the system to date. If I want to create a new form, I'm just going to click this blue button up at the top here and add in a title for my form. We ask that you start with the 3-letter code for your library just to make sure everything kind of stays standardized and you know which ones are yours and everybody else knows which forms are theirs. So I'm going to make this as an Alden test event and save it. So you'll notice that my form got created, but there's actually nothing in it right now. So if I go over here and click the little pen and paper, this is where I'll add my information to my registration form. By default, it asks for the person's name and email. But if I start over here in this accepted identification methods box, I can make it so that email address is disabled, enabled but not required, or required. And I can tell it's required because there's that little asterisk there that shows me that someone needs to enter an email. So me setting this up recognizes that maybe not everyone has an email address. So I'm going to enable it, but not require it. If someone puts an email address in here, this is where their confirmation email will go to. This is where if you're sending a reminder email or a follow-up email after the event, it will go to this email address. Obviously, if they do not put in an email address, they won't get those emails. I can also add a field for someone to put their phone number in. And I can also add for library barcode, which is LibCal's way of saying library card number. But I don't really need to know someone's library card number, so I'm going to leave that disabled. I'm going to now hit this blue button that says Save. And you'll see on my right side here my live preview of the registration form has updated. So it still shows my full name as required. It shows that email box, but now it's not required. And it shows the phone number box that, again, is not required. If that's all the information that I need to collect from someone, great, I'm done. But maybe I want to know how much experience they have with Microsoft Word, or if they've read the book that we're going to be talking about at this week's book club. This is where I can add additional questions to collect from patrons when they're registering for my event. A question came up in our library trainings here about setting up registrations and being able to collect, for instance, the ages of the children who are going to be registering for this event, or something like that. This would be where you would add that. You would add that as a question on the registration form for someone to fill out. So if I add my question, you'll see that I can type in my question text. So I'm going to say, if you are registering multiple children, what are their ages? And this is really going to be, at least for now, the easiest way for you to collect that information if that's something that you want to know for your event. You could select what type of question it is, whether it's a checkbox or a drop-down or a multi-line text, which a multi-line text would be really handy if I want to know the ages of these kids. Or if I just want to know if I've read the book or not, I can say, have you read this book? And I can make my selections yes or no, or working on it. So there's a bunch of different options here, and it really just depends what information you're looking to collect from your patrons. And if you have additional questions about registration forms, again, please feel free to contact us. There's so much that you could do with this registration form, but it really just depends how you and your library or your department want to use it. So if I want to add this question, I'll just hit Add Question. And again, I'll see it's here down at the questions, and it also came into my live preview for my registration form. And if I decide that that is perfect, that's all the information that I need to add, I'm done. If I want to add additional questions, I can scroll down to the bottom and add more questions. Maybe I want to know if they liked the book, or, how much experience do you have with Microsoft Excel? Or have you been to one of our Graham Cracker events before? Something like that. So that is where you set up your registration forms. And if we go back to the registration forms, again, these are all of the forms that have been created so far. And I can go back in and edit my form if there's something else I need to add or something I need to change. And then again, when you're creating that event on the calendar, and I'll just show you guys again, creating that event, and you add registration, that's where you can select your registration form. So there's my new registration form that I just created, and I can use it for my events going forward. And this is great because you can create these standard registration forms and use them for tons of events if you're collecting the same information over and over again from patrons registering. You don't have to go in every single time and create that form. So again, just to go over how we got here, we went to this LibCal Calendars tab. And again, here's the link to the back end where you'll add your events. And here's a link to the public URL. And there's all my events. Whether it's in card view, which I think is really pretty, and you can see if you're in card view and an event has registration, it'll add this little green ribbon that will say how many seats are left. And I think that's just great. That's visually very great for patrons to be able to see. Okay, so I showed you how to log into LibCal, how to access the calendar, how to add an event, whether it is a single event or a recurring event. We talked about registrations, and we talked about editing events. I also showed you how to add a featured image to an event that will then show up on the public website, like right here or here. I showed you how to use the image manager or how to upload your own event depending on what the event is. And that is LibCal calendars. Again, pretty intuitive, right? If you guys have any questions, please, please, please call the Development and Communications Department at 716-858-7189 or email me at burgessm@buffalolib.org. And thank you so much for joining me today. And again, there's also that section of the intranet dedicated to the new SpringShare applications. Just look for that box that says the LibCal Room Reserving Calendar on the homepage of the intranet. This page will be updated as we have new help guides, as there are updates or changes made, anything like that. We will put it on this page for you all to see. All right, well, thank you again for joining me. And enjoy LibCal.